Hey everyone, Albus here. Like I promised, here is my new Earthen Bulwark 2.0 build. I'm guessing the first thing you want to see is some gameplay, so let's kick it off with a level 99 dungeon. I ran out of sigils and couldn't get the 100, but 99, same thing. Alright, so what we're going to do is go over each piece of gear and we're going to go over the basics with the abilities. I've got a complete build guide in the description. Okay, so the first item is going to be when Nature's Fury key passive triggers a free skill, your cooldowns are dropped by 12 seconds. So we are 100% relying on Nature's Fury, which is this passive here. Essentially, when we cast an Earth skill, we get a free Storm spell 30% of the time, and it goes the other way around as well. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it by now. Make sure you get this on your amulet. You want to reach the maximum roll of 12 seconds. Oh, by the way, we're also going to go over stat priority on every single item as well. I know a lot of you guys will appreciate that. Let's jump onto our ring. So basic skills gain 29% attack speed in my case. Attack speed is the fundamental stat for this build, along with cooldown reduction. Attack speed is going to make the build way more consistent. So on my next ring, we're going with Earth skills deal 40% more crit damage. Now let's jump over to the offhand. Werewolf skills function as storm skills, and werebear skills function as earth skills. This is going to allow us to reduce our cooldowns even further with Nature's Fury. Now let's jump onto the helm. I'm running Tempest Raw. Now, I want to make this very, very clear. Tempest Raw is not essential for this build. In fact, you do not need any uniques. Now, the only reason why we're using Tempest Raw is so we can use Claw, which is slightly more effective than the other spirit generators, but also it allows us to utilize our Paragon points for werewolves for our abilities. So Tempest Raw is the best in slot, but I'm telling you, it is not necessary to be able to dominate, level 80 plus dungeons. So don't worry about it if you haven't found it, but if you do, definitely put it on. Now we're going to be running armor. Armor is by far the best defensive stat in the game. This one's very straightforward. You gain 0.5 armor every time you attack, up to 50%, a massive defense boost. Now on our gloves, this is a damage booster. So casting a storm skill grants earth skills 45% more crit damage. Now for our pants, we're running basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 4.5 seconds. Pretty poor roll actually on this legendary. I guess I'm trying to find a better one. The damage reduction is absolutely key to this build, and I'll explain why as we get further into it. So for our boots, we're running while unstoppable for 4 seconds after. You gain, in my case, 16% increased movement speed. Bit of a poor roll here on this one too. I was playing around with some boots last night and forgot that I didn't have a max roll one. So that's cool. I've got something to look forward to. All right, now for our weapon, we are running the Butcher's Cleaver. The Butcher's Cleaver, in my opinion, is one of the strongest unique items in the game. It's also one of the most underutilized unique items in the game. Let me explain why. So you might think an item like this would be far superior. Ignore the legendary bonus that I've imprinted, but just look at the stats. Damage to poison enemies, crit strike damage to earth skills, crit damage again, vulnerable damage, a huge amount of damage that can come off this item. Now, the reason why the Butcher's Cleaver is so underutilized is because it looks terrible when you look at the stats on it. When you critically strike an enemy, you have a 100% chance to fear and slow them by 70%. Now, on the surface, why would you want enemies feared and running away from you when you're playing a close-ranged melee character? Well, you need to start thinking practically. So when you get into higher dungeons, as you can see by the gameplay, I do not need more DPS. We're doing 130 million crits. Damage is not a thing that we need. We need defense. When you're running the Butcher's Cleaver, it essentially lobotomizes the enemies. They are constantly feared, but also because they are slowed 70%, they're barely moving. It is by far the most defensive weapon in this game. Yeah, you do not get direct damage reduction stats. 80% of the monsters aren't attacking you because they're crowd controlled, feared, and running in the opposite direction. If you chuck this on, I guarantee you will automatically move up 5 to 10 levels in your dungeon pushing. So let's go over my abilities. You notice that I'm proccing Earthen Bulwark way more often than it ought to. So here's what we're doing. So here's Earthen Bulwark. We're using the second tier for the damage. Now we're using Claw. Because of Tempest Roar, Claw is now a Storm ability, but the main reason is because of this second node here. Claw has a 15% chance to attack twice. So we're going to be proccing our cooldowns much quicker. Again, if you do not have Tempest Roar, just run Storm Strike. It's really, really effective as well. Now, what you're going to notice is my Earthen Bulwark cooldown is 11.5 seconds. You want to get it to 12 seconds or lower. This is going to create this massive chain reaction. So for example, when I cast Earthen Bulwark, there is a 20% chance I can cast Cyclone Strike. And when Cyclone Strike gets casted, there's a 20% chance I can cast Earthen Bulwark. So they're bouncing off each other with cooldown reduction. On top of this, I've got Cyclone Armor in my active skills because I can use Cyclone Armor to proc Earthen Bulwark again, which can also lower the cooldown of Cyclone Armor. So it's this really vicious cycle of cooldown reduction going back and forth at an enormous speed. Now we're also running Hurricane, which can also lower the cooldown of all of our Earth skills as well. And we're also running Bloodhowl. So both of these abilities do not technically have a proper cast time. So you can cast these abilities while attacking at the same time. Both of these have a chance to lower the cooldown of Earthen Bulwark. And lastly, we're running Debilitating Roar. This is essential if you're going to be pushing Nightmare dungeons that about level 85 or higher, you're going to rely on having that extra defense. The cooldown is fairly low too. So let's go over some of the stats that I'm running here. Our priority is cooldown reduction. We've got it in every single slot, excluding the helm, because it doesn't roll on uniques. Uniques have set stats. So on our amulet, we've got cooldown reduction. Now we're also running cooldown reduction on our totem here. You can see it up the top, and we've also rolled into it on our stats. You want to get as much damage reduction on every single possible slot that you can. I've got 2 exceptions on my build just because I haven't rolled them yet. But as you can see, I've got damage reduction on the amulet. I've got damage reduction from close enemies. I've also got +3 ranks to Envenom passive. Getting +3 to Envenom is very hard because of the amount of skills that can roll on the amulet. Don't worry too much if you cannot find this particular passive roll. Essentially, all it does is give me 30% crit damage. So if you could just roll crit damage instead, it's going to be pretty effective as well, if not just as effective. Now, rings are very, very straightforward. All you want to do is go for vulnerable damage number 1, crit chance number 2, crit damage number 3. Now, in my case, I've got barrier generation, which is increasing the damage of my Earthen Bulwark. But I'm actually going to be going for more health, more maximum life. As I mentioned earlier, we do not need any more damage. We need more defense. So in my case, I do have barrier generation, and I believe the other ring is identical. Yeah, it's the exact same, except we've got crit damage on Earth rather than just plain crit damage. No strategy behind it. It's just the roll. And again, barrier generation, which I will eventually change to health. Now on our totem, we've got damage reduction to enemies that are poisoned. Again, we need that. Cooldown reduction, barrier generation, which you could roll for crit chance instead. And also basic skill attack speed. Now for our chest piece, we want 100% damage reduction on every single stat. I've actually rolled life on my chest, which is very nice. On your gloves, you want critical strike damage, attack speed, crit chance. We're also going to go for lucky hit. So this little bit of lucky hit that we've got changes Earthen Bulwark's lucky hit chance to 33% from 30%. It's a nice even number where it's exactly 1/3 of the time we're going to proc that lucky hit chance. It's just nice to have, you know. Then on our pants, damage reduction, every single slot that we can possibly go on. Now, on our boots, we're going to go for movement speed. We also want to go for total armor while in werewolf form. When we cast Earthen Bulwark, we'll actually be in human form. But because we're transitioning so quickly, most of the time we're going to be in a werewolf form with our basic attacks. So having that extra total armor is going to help us hit the armor cap. So we are as defensive as possible. We've also got some damage reduction while injured and fortify generation. So when our health gets low, we can very quickly get that fortify way back up again. And for our weapon, the Butcher's Cleaver, again, one of the most overpowered items in the game. Now the Spirit Boons, very easy, straightforward. Damage reduction from elites, maximum life, attack speed, and also fortify for 10% of your maximum life when you use a defensive skill. Earthen Bulwark is a defensive skill, and so is Cyclone Armor. So this is going to crank us up even further. And lastly, we're running Masochistic. Critical strikes with shape-shifting skills heal you for 3% maximum life. So when we get quite low, we can get our health back up very fast. It'll probably take me half an hour to go over the Paragon board. It's included in the build guide. All you need to know is that with Tempest Roar, we can now utilize the shape-shifting Paragon board. The idea is that we're going to maximize the amount of glyphs that we can use in every single slot. It's quite complex, but it's very, very straightforward. Just do what I'm doing. You'll be all right. All right, guys, so there it is. If you've got any questions, comment below. I also live stream, so you're welcome just to ask me on the live stream. It's very chill. I know you guys are going to fucking love this build, so have fun with it. See you in the next one. Bye, friends.